Hello, everyone. This is a brief overview of Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 is focused on crime in the United States. And the chapter starts out with a really good discussion about the relativity of crime and the relativity even of deviance, meaning essentially that crime is socially constructed. So here's an idea in the United States, if you want to be married, you can be married to only one person at a time. If that person would like to, if person A sees person X and thinks, wow, that person is even more cool and more groovy than the person that I'm married to, B, then A has to get a divorce from B so that A can then go and marry X. Not doing so is a crime, it's a felony if you marry more than one person at a time, if you're married to more than one person at a time. However, in other countries, most notably Muslim nation states, you can be married if you're a man, doesn't work for women, but if you're a man, you can be married to as many as four women. And of course, it is not only acceptable, it's encouraged by that society because men then who have more than one wife are helping society by supporting these women who typically would not be supported because they don't have a husband. So you also could think about prostitution and how in the United States, prostitution is illegal. We think it's terrible, evil, and wrong. On the other hand, in some parts of Europe, it's completely legal. In fact, in about, I think it's 11 or 13 counties in Nevada, prostitution is legal. And if prostitution were so terrible, evil, and bad, wouldn't Nevada have exploded or imploded long ago? So again, thinking about the fact that crime, who defines crime? That's socially constructed. And so crime will vary from place to place, even from time to time. Think about something that today is not illegal, but was in the past. For example, same-sex marriage. That was illegal. No states recognized same-sex marriage. And then slowly states began to recognize it. And finally, in June 2015, in the Obergefell versus Hodges case, the U.S. Supreme Court said, okay, everybody, heads up, every state now has to recognize same-sex marriage. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that crime is not static. That is, it's not this unchanging monolithic thing. It really is about the society that is defining the behavior, because behavior in one country might not be the same in another country, and vice versa. So again, thinking about how crime is relative and how it's socially constructed. Also, there's a critique or an explanation of how Robert Merton's strain theory really focuses on the American dream, on this idea that we're all supposed to have the nice car and the nice home and the 2.5 children with the white picket fence. We're supposed to have this comfortable life. And yet Merton argues that that American dream and the lack of legitimate opportunities to achieve that dream are what may be responsible for some types of crime being committed by various types of people. And of course, there's another further discussion in the chapter about how other American ideals or other American dreams or norms, things that we focus on, might also contribute to crime and the reasons why people might commit crime. There's a great discussion too about how the United States became a country which prided itself on being tough on crime. And the reality is this: not all societies are as tough on crime as we are in the United States. Now, of course, you may think to yourself, well, what do we have to learn from those other countries? Is America, goddammit, it's the best country in the world? Maybe, but that doesn't mean that we don't or can't maybe look at other countries and the things that they're doing and maybe learn a thing or two. And so to that end, the U.S. in particular, some states more than others. I live in California, and I'm supposing many of you do as well. This is a fairly progressive state, but even so, by the late 1980s, going all the way through the early 2000s, this was a state that was getting tougher and tougher on crime with three strikes law and mandatory minimum sentencing. And as of about 5 years ago, California legislators began to realize, well, wait a minute. We have overcrowded prisons. Federal courts are watching what we're doing. We've been in trouble with the courts in regard to constitutional rights of prisoners. Maybe we should do something different because what we're doing right now obviously isn't working. We're really tough on crime. We're putting people in for long periods into prison, and yet more and more people are committing crime. So we have this overcrowding situation. And so, as I said, over the last 5 years or so, California has implemented some new legislation that does enable people with certain types of violations or felony convictions to be able to apply to have their cases reviewed so their sentences can either be reduced or that they may possibly even be released due to time served. And those are primarily drug offenses. That's a huge one. And of course, there has also been a move in California, and this has been criticized, it's called realignment, to have some people who come out of California prisons who are considered to be perhaps nonviolent or who didn't commit crimes that are in the recent past. Those individuals are now often, it's not parole because they're not, well, I guess they are paroled. But they're reassigned or realigned to, rather than respond to a parole officer, respond to a probation officer. And so, that's a huge change too, because typically if you have served time in prison, you report to a parole officer and not to a probation officer. That's somebody you report to if you haven't been sent to prison. So at any rate, there are some really interesting things going on in criminal justice today in the United States. And so I've tried to put together some materials, some resources for you to review as you're going through the chapter. I hope you enjoy this chapter because I personally think it's one of the more interesting ones. So I'll see you next week.